Welcome to Living with the Times. Today we're going to discuss a very enigmatic, mysterious episode in Parshat Chukat. And this is when Moshe, instead of talking to the rock to bring forth water, he hit the rock. And God's response is, because you did not sanctify my name, you cannot go into Eretz Israel. Commentators for thousands of years have been trying to understand the degree of these, as it were, punishment of not going into Eretz Israel, which Moshe so much desired to do, and seemingly a small act like instead of hitting the rock, instead of speaking to the rock, he hit the rock. Many ideas are put forward. In our short format here, we're just going to look at one of the ideas. And we see that Moshe rebuked the people. He called them rebels. And an anger came through Moshe towards the people. And he also said, should I bring forth water for you? Implying that he was going to bring the water and not that God was going to actually bring the water, and he was just a vehicle. So among the many ideas, we see that the disastrous effects of anger. And many commentaries say it was because of this anger. This was a new generation. And God wanted Moshe to talk to this new generation. The old generation had already died off. And now it's time to talk to a new generation. And so, although it seems very small to us, the difference between hitting the rock, especially when God told him to take the staff that he had already hit a rock to bring forth water. As I said, it's very enigmatic and mysterious. But we want to talk just a minute about anger. And first of all, we see that even though it's almost incomprehensible to us what a high, elevated, pure soul Moshe was, to speak to God face to face, mouth to mouth, to be the receptacle to bring down the Torah into the world. We really have no concept of the greatness of Moshe, but like all of our great leaders, men and women, they were human beings, and they had challenges, and they had emotions, and they were tried and tested, and they made mistakes. And the Torah is very clear about some of the mistakes, especially the book about Midbar, the book of Numbers, where almost the whole book is about different rebellions, different complaints, all kinds of challenges to Moshe and the people. So the Slonim Rebbe points out that these two ideas, that one, that Moshe implied that he would bring the water, was the slightest bit of pride. The slightest bit of ego got involved there. And the Slonim Rebbe says, ultimately, this leads to anger. A little bit of pride leads to anger. And our sages teach us that anger is compared to idol worship, where the person puts himself or herself on a pedestal and thinks the whole world has to bow to their will. And when they don't, they get angry. But here again, Moshe's anger is, for us, maybe it just would have passed. But we're also told by the sages that God judges the righteous, the tzaddikim, to a hair's breadth. So the whole book of Bamidbar, there's a lot of anger going on, a lot of trials and complaints and rebellions. And of course, there's so much we can learn from this. But about anger, as I said, the sages say this is one of the worst characteristics a person can have. And yet, one of the 12 months of the year, the month of Tevet, in the Sefer Yetzirah, each month has a sense, a chush. And the sense of the month of Tevet is anger. And so everyone asks, how could anger be one of the positive senses? So here we're talking about what we might call righteous indignation. When we see an injustice happening, instead of just letting it go in one ear and out the other, noticing it for a minute and then just not paying any attention, that injustice angers us. And that propels us, motivates us to take action to fix it, to rectify it. And so even though anger we need to uproot from our hearts, Reb Shlomo used to teach this all the time. To be a happy person, a fulfilled person, a person who's at peace with himself, we have to get anger out of our hearts. And here we see from Moshe the disastrous effects of even just the tiniest bit of anger in the wrong place. And yet we learn Moshe was the most humble person on the face of the earth. And so here we see the humanness of Moshe. Moshe was not perfect, and he was not elevated like many religions do to be a god. He was a human being, an elevated being more than we can ever understand, and yet he was human. So we'll end with a blessing that we should be very, very careful about expressing anger, especially outwardly or through speech. But even in thought, we need to try as best as we can. We're all human beings, like Moshe, but we have to try the best to uproot anger from our hearts. And when we do that, we really can be at peace with ourselves and be a happy person and a fulfilled person. May we all be able to accomplish this.